You might be looking at something and say, I don't think I deserve that. Well, it's not up to you to decide. Leave it to the committee to decide, right? Give yourself a shot. If you don't put your hat in the ring, you're never going to get it. So the worst is that you don't get it even though you applied, right? And I mean, who else is going to know you better than yourself, right? Who else is going to be able to really cheer yourself on better than what you know you've done?
Hey Rachel, how are you?
Good. How are you, Rosie?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being on my podcast today. So we have a special guest, Rachel Farris, CPA. She is the founder of Tech Stack AI. Rachel, before we dive in about more details about your career, can you share with the audience more about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm from San Diego originally. Went to school just up the Central Coast and spent my whole life kind of inching my way all the way up to San Francisco. I'm an avid lover of traveling and food, and I really love the field of accounting, and I think that it is a great career opportunity for young people to get into. So I'm very excited to start this conversation with you today.
That's amazing. Let's talk about from the beginning when you go with the accounting. I'm just curious if your parents guide you through this accounting major or someone guide you through this accounting major.
Yeah, so really interesting. Actually, I started in marketing. So super weird pivot, right? Marketing is a very creative industry, and I think accounting isn't necessarily known for being as creative. But I felt like I had a really great background in marketing. And when I was pursuing another degree, I really wanted to look into getting something tangible, something with numbers, something very substantive. And so I took a first accounting class. Didn't think I was going to like it. And I was really good at it. I was the kid in the class that I was acing every test, and my professor came up to me and said, "Hey Rachel, you might want to look into doing this. You're really excelling. I normally don't see this happening that quickly." And so I looked into it and I kind of talked with my professor about, what lifestyle looks like in accounting and how his daughter was an accountant, and it allowed her to have a family and it allowed her to have the money to buy a home and all these things that sounded nice. So I kind of got pushed into it that way. My parents didn't really push me that way. My dad is a business guy, but he is definitely more on the entrepreneurial marketing side. So that's kind of why I leaned into that to begin with. But he's come to embrace the idea of being an accountant and really thinks that there's a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities for accountants that I think a lot of people don't always see.
Oh, that's interesting. That's what I want to dive in more later in this discussion about all the opportunities that you had through your career. But let's go from very beginning, like after you got the accounting major, you graduate, and then you work at a big four right after you graduate for like a little bit of time, and then you move to private. So can you walk me through your career path after you graduate and share with the audience what the lesson you learned through that?
Yeah, definitely. So, actually, through school, I was doing accounting work as well, at local firms and for small businesses, kind of helping out here and there. So, when it was time for graduation, actually, I stuck around and worked at the low income taxpayer clinic in my university. And basically, if you haven't heard of a low income taxpayer clinic, it is an area where we help low income people in our community, deal with offering compromises. Maybe they forgot to pay their taxes, or maybe something happened where they're no longer able to pay their tax burden. And so I worked with that for almost a year, being able to assist people in my community. And then finally, I was, ready to jump into the real world. And I started my career at Big Four. I was in strategy and transactions. So a little bit of a different path. I didn't go the traditional audit or tax route, but it did allow me to do rotations through those different subgroups. So, I got some experience in audit, I got experience in M&A, I got experience even a little bit in tax. And so it was nice to kind of build that foundation. And in the background of that, while I was doing it, I was doing a lot of upskilling. I was doing my day to day job, but I was also taking tax courses online. I was also, trying to interact and network with professionals here or there. And eventually I got to the point where I was able to kind of build a little bit of a network on my side that when I decided to make the jump from public to private, it was very easy, and I ended up starting up my own firm. So, kind of a crazy journey. From there, I actually ended up creating TaxStack AI, like you said before. That really came out of a need for my own personal technology. I actually hired a developer to build this for my own company and found that everyone was asking me, hey, where did you get that technology from? And so then I decided to sell it. But it originally wasn't an idea to sell to other people. It was just an in house technology that we were using.
Oh, you just went through like all your career in just like couple minutes, and we will for
Yeah.
sure will have a lot of questions to ask you for each step away that you go through in your career. Let's just go through a little bit in public accounting, not that you stay there for several years and you just focus on strategy and transactions instead of audit or tax. What did you learn the most in those years?
I think I learned how to work with people. I know everyone says it's technical subject matter, and there is a bit of that. But I actually think I learned how to interact with people in the workplace and network a lot. And I think, I always hold true to the saying, it's more about who you know sometimes than what you know. And I think that really held true in my career. I would send out, you know, to the CEO or the VP of something comes into town, I would send emails and pings just saying I would love to pick your brain and go out to coffee or whatever. Some people never would reply to me. Some people would say yes. So I feel like that was honestly the biggest thing was just shooting my shot. And the worst thing that someone says to you is no. In terms of technical knowledge, I felt like I just learned how to use Excel a lot better. Starting at a low income taxpayer clinic, it was a lot of paper. We were getting receipts, physical receipts, from people. We were doing a lot of manual things versus, when you're working at a bigger company, you get a lot of exposure to technology, AI, Excel, Ultrix, all these things that you didn't really get at a smaller company. And so because of that, I felt like I really upskilled my technological literacy through Big Four.
You must be so brave to send out an email for like a coffee or to meet up at a very early stage in your career because a lot of people will say, wow, they are VP, they are CEOs, they must be so busy and so they would never have time for me. It's just very impressive that you were able to do that. Did someone like suggest you to do so or you just think that oh I just give it a try?
I think I just gave it a try. I think I'm lucky to come from a household where my parents, especially my dad, just made me do things like that as a kid. I was 12 years old when I got my first job. So my dad just saw the ice cream store nearby was hiring and he said, "You're going to go get a job." So I walked in there with my resume, dressed in like, business casual at 12 years old and actually got the job. So my dad was constantly pushing me to just say random things. I remember a story. There was a guy with a donut delivery truck next to us in traffic on my way to school. I was probably in ninth grade, maybe. And my dad said, ask him for donuts and see if he has any. And so we asked him for donuts, and he actually gave his donuts out of the car. So I was grown up in this environment where my dad said the worst they're going to say is no. And he always pushes those boundaries a lot. So when it came to the workplace, I was like, well, the worst that happens is they say no or they don't reply to me. No one's going to say, when I'm actively trying to get to know them and say, I want to take you out for coffee or lunch, no one's going to say, how dare you even think of messaging me during this time of year, right? I have never once gotten that reply. I have people that never replied to me. That's totally fine. But then some people were like, I've never had someone reach out to me. You had the courage to do it. Let's go grab lunch
Yeah.
together. I'll let you pick my brain. And then I'm talking to someone that has 50 years of experience that's, high up at Big Four, or I'm talking to someone that is the CFO of a big company in the Bay Area. You never know what's going to happen, right? You just need to have the courage to be able to do it.
Now I'm just curious if you can share with audience one of a very interesting story that you pick up brain from people who have a lot of experience in the industry.
Oh, a really good story from people that have a lot of experience in the
Mm-hmm.
industry. Oh, that's a good one. Well, I actually will say when I have these conversations, a lot of the time we end up talking about personal lives and somehow intertwining that into work. So I won't name names here, but I was talking to someone that was pretty high up in Big Four, and they had actually hiked Kathmandu and the Himalayas. And so that was one thing that we kind of bonded over in my intro message was I knew that they had hiked in Nepal, and I have hiked in Nepal. So I sent it out and said, I would love to talk about your trip in Nepal, which is very not work related, right? But they were like, oh my gosh, I never get to talk about this in the workplace. Let's do it. And so through that, we talked about the trials and tribulations of going through a big hiking journey like that and applying that perseverance to a career in Big Four in accounting. And so, while you're hiking, it's day after day. I was going for 15 days straight. You're freezing your butt off, right? But the same thing applies when you're dealing with busy seasons, and it might be a little monotonous day after day, but at the end, you're actually reaching to the pinnacle of this career. So at the top of the mountain, I get a great view. At the top of my career, I then get the flexibility to really decide how I want to use my knowledge and what type of industry I want to go into. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And that was one story that really resonated with me because he did such a good job at connecting back a personal, interesting experience to actual work advice as well.
So this is a really good example that when you come out to connect with people, it's not all about just work. It's easier when you can connect something personal and related topics, and then from there people will start opening more, and it's easier to talk than
Mm-hmm.
about other topics than just work at the very beginning. So I really like how you
100%.
share that story. That will show the audience that hey, it's actually not that scary to go out and connect with people if you can connect with them at the personal level first and then expand to
Yeah.
the work level.
100%. I think one thing I want to add to that too is, this applies to even before you're in the workplace. Like, I remember when I was going to career fairs when I was first starting my career, I took their business cards and would have a personal conversation with them, and I would write on the back of the business card some info about them personally. And so let's say we were talking about their dog, right? And how their dog really likes to go swimming in the river. And, after the career fair, I would send my follow up email and I would mention something in there, be like, say hi to your dog for me. Like, I hope they enjoy their walk this weekend, right? Or let's say we talk and I know that you have a young baby, right? Maybe I'll mark down, the baby's name, and when I send the next email, I'll be like, oh, how's your kid doing? How's all that going? And so it's a really great way to connect with people. People remember you. They might not remember my name's Rachel, but they'll be like, oh, she was the girl I talked about my dog with. And it'll kind of spark that memory for them. And it's a really great way to be able to continue to check in with people. And people love talking about themselves. That's a huge thing. In interviews and in life, people will actually remember you more when you made them feel good. And so I always like to leave conversations where that person feels like they got to talk and really tell about themselves. It's not just me asking, so how'd you get into this business? What can I do on my resume to make myself stand out? Like, no, I'm building a connection with you. I'm not using you, right? And so there has to be kind of a mutual exchange there.
I have to say that I was very impressed at the beginning when we talked before we recorded this podcast and you asked my baby's name. I was like, I have interviewed a lot of guests, and yes, I mentioned about I'm having a baby. I don't think anyone asked my baby's name, and I was like, oh, okay. She asked about my baby's name. So,
No, and it's something I'll remember. I'm not going to say it on air just for
mhm.
privacy purposes, but it's something that I'll remember. And I always like to build that connection with other people. There's a lot of brain space up here. I'm sure once I become a mom, maybe some of that brain space will go away, but it's great. I remember people not necessarily by their names, but who they are more. And I think that actually builds a lot more of repertoire, right? When I meet someone, it's not just a familiar face and a familiar name, it's a story behind that person, and they know a story behind me as well. And so I think people really resonate that, especially when you're younger and you don't necessarily have connections to give to them or you can't offer them a job. What are you bringing to the table? And it's your own personality. So that's really what you want to leverage as a young person. You want to be the person they want to work with. I have a funny little tidbit here actually about how I got hired into Big Four. Um, I remember one of the people that hired me just said that he didn't want to shoot himself talking to me. And I know it's a very gory way to say it, but it's true. You're looking at a pool of people going into the workplace. Technically and knowledge wise, you might have a little bit of a leg up on the next person in your peer. But what really makes you stand out is who you are as a person. They want to hire someone that doesn't necessarily just know accounting, but they want to hire someone that they want to work with on a daily basis. And that's going to hold true for the rest of your career. Even if you're doing your own business with clients, they want to work with someone that they want to talk to. And so if you can make yourself interesting and you can really be true to who you are, you're going to be a lot more successful than if you just dive straight into the books and only focus on, technical knowledge.
That's so true that a lot of people saying that, oh, accountants, we just stay on the desk all the time. And the more I talk with other CPAs or like other accountants, the more I notice that it's not really the case. We we go out and talk to people a lot. And also, yes, you are accountants, you're supposed to know the numbers. You're supposed to understand the financial statements. But as you said, it's not everything. It's not. It's about
No,
the
you have to know the
personality.
bigger picture. It's about the bigger picture too, getting to know clients, for example,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think a really good example of this is, I have a client, they have kids that are about to enter university. And when they were getting closer to entering university, I was like, hey, let me know if you need help with the FAFSA or if you want help, helping organize anything for your kids' university. And they went, I can't even believe that you remember that I have kids that are about to go to university, right? And that holds true. It helps make you a better professional services person too. It's not necessarily just about building a connection with them, but if I didn't remember that about them, I can't then go ahead and offer a different service or, make myself stand out. And now they're probably going to want to stay with me even longer because I'm able to provide kind of extra things because I know about them as people.
That's so true. That talking about that, I want to share one of my stories as well. That when I work at one of the CPA firm in the past, that whenever I talk to people, I will note it down on my phone instead. As you mentioned on the back of the business card, I will note down on the phone and say, "Oh, they have this experience with their kids. Oh, they have this many pets." So on the last day before I left that firm, I had a conversation with a partner, and I mentioned about the conversation that we talked like probably like a year or a half ago, and he was very surprised. He's like, "Oh, I didn't expect you remember that I spent this time with my daughter at the stadium, on this date." And I was like, "Of course I remember, but the truth is that I did not remember. I look at my note." so
Yeah,
so I look at my notes before I
it
talk to
works for
him.
you.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, let's say you don't have a great memory. That still works, right? And I bet it helped you leave on better terms,
mhm.
right? You have a way more personal relationship, and he's now going to remember you because of that, right?
I know that's so true. Is I just want to emphasize that building a relationship in this profession or in any profession you are in is more about being yourself, being authentic. Instead of if you try to fake to be someone else, soon enough it will come out, and it's very difficult to
Hmm.
maintain it. So just be yourself, be authentic, and go out and build the connection, build the relationship, and that will bring you to the next level of your career. So Rachel, you start in marketing, and I noticed that you was the founder and CEO of Digital Marketing Girls as well for 6 years.
Hmm.
How's that experience related to your accounting experience?
Really great question. Thanks for asking that. I think it's helped me market myself, and you'd be surprised when you're running your own firm or even working at another firm. I think marketing yourself is more important than maybe even knowing the actual technical knowledge sometimes. I don't want to say fake it till you make it, right? But when you're able to pitch why you should be given an opportunity or why you're the right person for this, you get a lot more things falling on your lap. So, really, what I learned from that initial career in marketing was how to, pitch myself in a way, not necessarily saying, hey, I know everything, right? But showing that I'm actually able to take advantage of this opportunity, or here's what else I can bring to the table because of my unique background, right? So, when I talk about things with clients or when I talk about, starting my own business, right? A big portion of that was getting my name out there. And no one would want to hire little old me at such a young age without really having that type of background, right? So I had to prove that I was the person that was the right person for this role. And so through that, it's a lot of marketing, it's a lot of self branding. And I think that every accountant should know a little bit about self branding and know a little bit about marketing because it really lends well to growing your career. Um, it helps build a network, right? But it also helps you reach out to people that may have never heard of you otherwise without, finding you online or finding you through a podcast or an article or something of that sort.
So, based on all your experience in the marketing area, can you share with our future CPAs or like young CPAs right now, what can they do to marketing to do better marketing themselves in this profession?
Yeah, I think the first big thing is LinkedIn. It's a powerful, powerful tool. If you're not a CPA yet, or even if you are a CPA and you're listening to this, it's very important to have an active presence. And now I'm not saying make cheesy posts that no one actually cares about, like on a daily or weekly basis. Come up with something with substance that you want to write about. Let's say you are in a university class right now and you had a really interesting lecture that you want to share some outcomes from. That's great. But let's say you're just plugging something into ChatGPT to be like, let's talk about, I don't know, operating losses, right? I don't think you're providing as much value to people as you would providing a personal perspective behind things, right? I think that's a first big thing. I think the second is really establishing yourself. So, one unique thing I did when I went to career fairs, I actually have business cards, and no students have business cards, right? So, you go, you take someone else's business card, and you hand them your resume. It's a lot more impressive when you also can hand along a business card with that, right? So there's aspects to branding where you're kind of building that personal side of things. I would even suggest having a personal website. Maybe you do. I have rachelfarrycpa.com. I had that for a while. But maybe you have, I don't know, joesmith.com or joesmith accountant.com, right? And you can blog on there. You can write about your own endeavors. It can be a little personal space to document kind of what you've been doing and what makes you different. It doesn't have to just be career related. It can be, I went on a really great trip to, I don't know, Argentina. Here are my takeaways, right? And maybe somehow relate it back to business. Just have a way to people to reach out to you so you have a presence online while you're in university and starting your career.
I remember that when you mentioned about the business card as a student, I got one for myself as well. And I still remember the reaction that I received. I said, "Oh, you have a business card too." So,
Mm-hmm. It's a great reaction. I mean, no one has it. Like, we're probably some of the rare one percenters in there that went out of their way to pay for some business cards, and they're pretty cheap. So I
exactly.
would suggest getting them. And again, I think it should be paper. I know we're going into this digital age where people want to scan your QR code, right? Paper. People somehow it just has more of a personal feel to it, in my opinion. And I think the other big thing that people can do to market themselves, nominate yourself for awards. I know that sounds really dumb and you might not think you deserve it, but you'd be surprised. There are young, upcoming accountants or upcoming entrepreneurs or kids, trying to get scholarships here and there. Apply to things. You never know what you're going to get. You'd be surprised. I was applying to scholarships and awards left and right. I was applying to do random programs and I thought I was completely underqualified, but no one's applying to these things, so you end up getting it, right? It's just about putting a shot out there and, then you can say, "Hey, I competed in this case competition. I didn't do well, but no one needs to know that, right? Oh, hey, I got this award. Okay, maybe only 5 people were nominated, right? People don't need to know that, but the reality is you're putting yourself out there and you're having other people back you up, right? And so it makes things flow a lot easier. It becomes a lot more impressive when you're entering the workplace to say, I did these case competitions, I won these scholarships, and it has other people justifying for you before your employer needs to justify you.
That's a really good tip. Yes, you can do self nomination for a lot of awards, and why not? Why you have to wait for someone else to nominate you when you can just control your life, control your awards, and go out? Because a lot of awards out there, they always have an option self nomination. It's not like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're not allowed to nominate yourself, and that will be a different story. But every
Yeah.
single award, they always say self nomination and write a paragraph why you think you deserve this award. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
good opportunity for you to prove yourself, to show that this is what you have done and you deserve this award. That's
Yeah.
all.
I mean, I think we're all our own harshest critics, right? But we're also our best motivators in the sense that, you might be looking at something and say, "I don't think I deserve that." Well, it's not up to you to decide. Leave it to the committee to decide, right? Give yourself a shot. If you don't put your hat in the ring, you're never going to get it. So the worst is that you don't get it even though you applied, right? And I mean, who else is going to know you better than yourself, right? Who else is going to be able to really cheer yourself on better than what you know you've done? And so I think there's a really beautiful thing about self nomination. Now, a lot of the bigger awards don't allow self nominations, but start small. Start on, I don't know, let's say you live in Cook County, start in Cook County's top accountant, right? Like Cook County's young upcoming accountant. I don't know, right? Like there's so many small awards out there that are coming from, mom and pop shops or, small towns or whatever. Go after it. Why not?
And it's add up. And you had the small one, it will add up for you to get a bigger one. So yeah,
Exactly.
start
It's a
from
big
small.
thing of self branding. Yep,
Exactly. That's personal
100%. I totally
branding.
agree.
That's very
Hmm.
important.